Hello everyone, welcome back. My name is Robert Dempster, and in our last lesson we imported some custom brushes, we created a new document. Now we're going to move on to the next stage, which is importing images and how to edit them. Now with this workflow, I use this in almost all of my concepts, so it's a really good thing to learn now, and then we'll move on to the next stage. So let's get started. There's multiple ways that we can upload our image. If you were going to copy and paste an image from the internet, if you press copy on the image and then go up to File and New, then it will copy those pixels and the same dimension right over to Photoshop, so you can do it that way. Or you can go to File and Open and load it this way, or Control O as a shortcut. And then we just need to navigate where our image is. Now for me, I usually just drag and drop these images on. I find it much easier just to drag and drop. So we can go over to our first image. In this case, I'm going to use this wall and drag this in. And then it will load our image. So nice and easy, just drag and drop, and then we can load our image into Photoshop. Again, we've got our same layout here. We've just got our layers and our colors, keeping it nice and easy so we can just see the entire frame of our canvas. And if you want to, you can right click on the background and you can change the background color. You could set your own custom color, or let's just set this to black. I like to keep it at dark gray, and you can just choose whichever one you want. Now of course this also depends on what image you're using. So with some images, if it's predominantly dark, you might want to have a lighter background, or vice versa. I like to keep it just at dark gray. Right, so in this lesson we're going to apply multiple images on top of each other, and we're going to go through some of the layer styles. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to load two of these images. So we've got our wall, and then I've got this graffiti image that I'm going to put on top. So as soon as I drag and drop, it wants to go into the free transform. And if you just left click on either of these arrows, then it's going to move uniformly. Now, if you have an older version of Photoshop, then you may need to hold Shift, and then that will lock at the same aspect ratio. With the newer Photoshop, they flipped it. They love doing that. They love changing the layout in later versions. But now when you hold Shift, it will free transform, and you can stretch this image. But for now, we want to keep this just uniform to that aspect ratio. So I'm going to move this into place, and then I'm going to press enter. And we can see that on this side, where we've got our layers, on the graph image, we've got this little icon here, and that means that it's a smart layer. Now with a smart layer, we can't edit this. If I go over to my brush and I tap on it, it's going to say that I can't do that with this smart image. So we're going to have to rasterize this first. And if you drag and drop an image onto Photoshop, it is going to try and rasterize it. So we're going to, create a smart image. So I'm going to right click on that layer, and I'm going to select rasterize layer. Okay, so now if I use my brush, let's use my eraser, I can erase this image. So, okay, we could say, well, we've done it. We've put an image on top of another one, great, but it doesn't really look believable. So we want to try and blend this graffiti paint into the wall in the background. So how do we do that? There's multiple ways we could do it. We could use one of our brushes. We could use a custom brush here. Let's just try any of these. And I could slowly start to erase some of these areas here and try and blend it in, which is fine. That's a technique in on itself, and especially if you want to do something nice and quick, then you could do it this way. But again, it doesn't match the same lighting that's on our wall, so it doesn't look very believable. So I'm going to just undo this, Control Z to undo. And I'm going to go through some of these layer styles. Now it's usually set to normal by default. So if you select normal, then we've got a bunch of presets here. So if I set this to dissolve, we could see that it's slowly going to dissolve part of this image away. I've just noticed that I've still got some of the erased areas there. Let's get rid of that. So again, normal, dissolve, darken, so that anything dark within that layer is going to be removed. We've got multiply, which will multiply that layer directly on top of the one underneath. Got color burn, linear burn, and you can go through these and see what results you get. So you can see with lighten, it's removed all of the darks and it's only kept the light. So we can start to see the layer that's underneath, but again, it doesn't look totally realistic. Lighten or screen is really good if you're adding flames to an image or smoke, because you want to just keep the lights and remove the darks. But we'll go over that in another video. So you can go through these, and what I usually do when I'm creating a concept is I'll click on one of them. So let's say click on dissolve, and then I'll use the arrow key. So I'll just press down and I'll keep scrolling through until I have that desired effect. So we can see with soft lights, it's done a pretty good job at adding the background layer to this now foreground layer. And that's fine. You could keep it like that. You could go onto the eraser and again start chipping away at it if you wanted to, blend this in even more. And that's pretty good. That works very well. Now there's another way to do it, and again I'm just going to undo all of this, and I'm going to go onto the normal layer again, so back to normal, and I'm going to double click on this layer instead. So don't double click on the text because that's going to try and rename it, but just double click on this grayed area here. So by doing that, it's going to bring up the layer style, and we've got again a lot of presets here, and maybe we'll go through some of them in another video. So we've got things like stroke, which is going to add a line around it. Okay, so we can add a thick black line around our image. But what we want to do is we want to go back to just our blending options, and it'll be this by default, and we want to go down to here, blend if. Now what blend if will allow us to do is to either remove the darks on the layer on top, or remove the lights from the layer on top, or the layer that's underneath, the darks could be brought forward or the lights could be brought forward. So let's just try this underlying layer. So if I just left click and drag this forward, you can see that the brickwork of the background layer is starting to come forward. Okay, so it's getting there. It's looking a little bit better. We're starting to see some of those darks, but we need to blend it in a little bit more, and this is where this blend if comes into play. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold Alt on the keyboard, and you can see there's two little arrows here. So we're just going to split one. So again, hold Alt, hold left click, and then just drag one of these tabs. Okay, so now you can see that it's starting to blend it in nicely, so it's a bit smoother. And then you can play around with the other tab and get it just right. So you may want to go back onto the layer that's on top and maybe see if you can blend in some of those darks. So maybe it's just a little bit too black here. So I can again hold Alt, hold left click and drag this tab. And I might just want to make a very subtle change there. Let's see. No, I think I'm going to keep it like that. So let's experiment with the whites. Okay, that's going to dull some of the lighter areas of that paint. And again, on the underlying layer, I could hold Alt and split this tab. And that's just going to bring some of the lighter areas of that brickwork forward. So again, I've moved it forward. If you hold Alt, hold left click, then we're going to be able to blend it. So now I can press OK, and this is starting to look really good. You can see that we've got this paint that looks like it's started to fade. And again, we could go back onto our eraser and start erasing some areas. And that's it. So that is how we can blend these images on the wall. Now the great thing as well is, because it's just affecting the layer that's underneath, I can continue to move this and transform this anywhere I want, and it's still going to have the same effect. So with that brick wall being lighter up there, it will have that effect. And if I bring it down here, then it's going to erase a little bit more on that darker area. So you got full control over it, as opposed to maybe flattening the image and then trying to paint over it or erase it. This way we can still move that image. Now it's also in perspective here. This image was flat and this wall is moving down in perspective. So I'm going to press Ctrl and T on the keyboard, and if you right click on the image, we've got a bunch of other settings. So we could set this to perspective, and then if you move this tab up, we can see that it's starting to move down in perspective. Now this is going to be nice and easy with this brick wall, because all we basically have to do is match our grid to these lines. So I could bring this one down and match it to this line. So I know that this one needs to come up a little bit. I can bring this one down and this one, and then keep going. Now personally, I don't like the perspective tool because it tries to snap to the same aspect ratio. So what I'll do, and I'm just going to Ctrl Z to undo this, is I usually use the skew tool. So if you right click and press skew, then now you've just got free roam as to where you want to move these points. So I can move this all the way up here, and now I can match that perfectly with this wall. Okay, so now I've got my graffiti on the wall. It looks like it's faded. We can see the brickwork that's underneath, and it's matching the same perspective. So they're just some of the tools that I'll use. Again, let's just recap. We've got our normal, and we can go through our layer styles this way. If you double click on the image, then we can use this blend if, and you'll want to experiment with these. You know, it's not going to be the exact same setting for this image for something else, so you're going to want to experiment with it. Just to show you an example, if I go onto this landscape mountains, so I'm going to get rid of all these layers and see the original image. I've applied smoke by using the exact same technique. Okay, so here it was literally just the grass, and I've used blend if. Here we've got the smoke, and if I just double click on this, we can see if we can see the original image. So I'll go back here. So there's our original, and I've used the eraser to remove part of the image. But by using that blend if, then I can start to erase some of the darker areas of the image on top, and then bring the dark that's underneath that layer forward. Okay, very clever. Again, more fog, and on this image I'll just go back, remove blend if. Okay, so I got an image of a volcano with the ash and the flames and smoke in that one image. Then I've applied it to this image, used blend if, and now blended it really nicely with the image that we're using. Okay, again, more smoke effects, and I can just keep adding to this. Keep adding. I can add a dragon here. I could add more flames. I could add a character here, using all of the same techniques. So we're going to go over to our next video, and in our next video we're going to go over this technique but in a little bit more depth. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.